The Broken Brain is really proud to be participating every year in International Overdose Awareness Day, which is August 31st, this next Monday, or whatever day it is on any year. But this year in particular, it is this upcoming Monday. We will be doing our annual live stream. This is the 5th year running. We'll be doing a live stream with Isabel Turan, who's been a guest on this, and also the host of That's Bodacious Dude, the podcast about 80s movies that I have also been privileged enough to be on as a guest several times too. So she's going to be co-hosting me. We're going to be on about, 5 hours or so. And we will be talking about addiction. And this year's theme in particular is called Healthy. What's that? Where we're talking about the role of health and health management in general as it comes to addiction, recovery, sobriety, and health, and just all that. I said health twice, and that's how important it is. You can go to my website, dwighthurst.com/live, in order to find links to watch the live stream. You can also it's on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. If you go to YouTube, look for Broken Brain Podcast, one word, as the channel, or youtube.com/Broken Brain Podcast, or just go to the live one. Now, at the very bottom, there is a click here to join the live stream, and make sure that you're aware that join is join. If you click on that one instead of the ones to watch, you will be on the program, and you are welcome to join us from anywhere from 10 seconds on up to all 5 hours. So love y'all and looking forward to the participation. And now enjoy this. I got two really great guests, fellow podcasters who are looking into the psychological and societal elements of debt and finances. And I predict you're going to enjoy it very much. The Broken Brain.
Recording in progress.
So I was being slow on that one. Gee. Click it. It's like, I'm not going to tell you for a minute. Who knows what it's doing? The Zoom AI is up to something, I'm sure. But
you got to guess. You got to guess, yeah.
It's going to want to take notes. All right, everybody, welcome back to The Broken Brain. It's me, it's Dwight. It's your host today, talking about the intersection of culture and psychology. And today I've got... This is really exciting for me. This is one of those where we're talking about a subject we don't get to hit on very often on here, but which is not only psychology and culture, the way people work, but also some of the psychology of money and how money and us do work, I think is how to say that. I'm joined today by Jamie Allison Feldman and Rachel Webster. They're the hosts of Debt Heads, the podcast. It's an award-winning podcast. They take a true crime investigation approach into the murder of our bank accounts, which, by the way, is a great tagline. I love that. That was in, I don't know if that was you guys or the published person, but...
it's all Rachel.
And one of the descriptive parts here is that it's a full picture of how the millennial dreams of self-actualization in the workplace have turned into a fierce nightmare. And I love that as well. I'm really excited to hear because I feel like a lot of attitudes and things about money, they really come down to the way we believe, the way we behave, and also, our own psychology and how we are taught to think about things. So, Jamie, Rachel, thanks for coming. I'm so glad to have you guys.
Oh, thank you for having us. We're excited to be here. It's like two of our favorite things to talk about.
Yeah.
Money and grief and psychology.
Grief was in the middle because it maybe ties with both of those sometimes.
Totally. Exactly.
Well, let's start out. Just tell everybody a little bit about who you are and how'd you get into this dirty, dirty business of podcasting that we've all been sucked into.
It was an accident. It was not our plan, which I think is probably true for a lot of people, but was really not our plan.
If you started on purpose, like some of us, you're automatically sus.
Yeah, that it wasn't our plan because we can't even figure out how to connect our microphones. But we're best friends and writing partners. We were working on a bunch of different projects. None of them were about money because money was a big secret in my life, especially my debt and the shame I had around that debt. So we talked about pretty much, everything else in the whole world, which is interesting because at the end of this process, now there's no way to not talk about money because it is underlying every single other thing in the world and in our culture and in our lives. And yeah, I had a huge, actually, I won't even say huge because I have more debt now, spoiler alert, but I had what seemed to me like a huge amount of credit card debt that I was trying to navigate on my own for many years as like a struggling journalist in New York City, making very little money and having, I don't know if you've ever heard of this term, but codependency issues. And
once or twice.
So yeah, just once or twice. And yeah, it sort of came to a head. I lost my job that I thought I was going to have for the whole rest of my life somehow. And I suddenly had these credit card payments that I could not just skate by, get by on. And I had this pivotal moment where I revealed this deep, dark secret to Rachel and waited for her to burn me at the stakes. And she was like, "Oh yeah, let's talk about it." So that's how it started. That was like a long time ago at this point, and it has changed so much. But that was the initial entry point to get us to start talking about money and to start having these bigger realizations about what the story is. That's not about me, but is really about the world that we live in.
Yeah. And podcasting became the sort of avenue with which we decided to, just get into these subjects because it was, there's a low barrier to entry. If you have
if you don't have money like us, yeah.
And because we're both writers and I am, my career has been filmmaking, it was very easy for us to start creating a narrative and start writing. The way we approach it is not interview based like most podcasts. It is a classic narrative documentary style. There's only 10 episodes of the podcast. It's like a storytelling journey, and so we decided that this was going to be the thing that we devoted a couple of years of our life to, because the topic was really, really, really fruitful for us, and something that I always wanted to talk about. Really tying these questions of our personal lives into this greater investigation into the economy and how it underlies, as Jamie said, so much of our lives that we often fail to question.
Yeah. Well, and I find that a lot of the attitudes and beliefs that are out there, there's advocacy sometimes for simple like positive thinking, or it gets intertwined with kind of like manifestation and some of those things that, and some of that, as people know, there's probably a lot of people out there. I know that there's a nuanced, like different definitions of that, but when people say manifestation, meaning just your attitude changes and then money will flow without, So you hear that as kind of that that positive talk, whatever. And then on the other hand, there's also the one that is sort of advocated kind of by default or whatever, but is just a despair of like, I don't know what to do. The economy sucks, or wherever it's at, or my job does, even if the economy, goes up and down, but my income and things. And it just feels like the deck is stacked against me. And I feel like people tend to not just lean one way or another, but kind of ping pong back and forth between those two. And I feel like I'm doing bad at both of them.
And like the key word I think here is like right? Like I can manifest my way out of the situation. I'm doing badly. My income is bad. Like it's so focused on the individual and the personal, which is like so, rampant in this country, especially that the narrative is like you are responsible for yourself and your failures and your success. When, the longer you look into it, the more you start having questions of like, how did we, not to say I, get here? And like, why do we believe that, So that was like one of the big pivotal moments is like, we are, told that if we are in financial distress, if we are having financial trouble, it's because we have done something inherently wrong and only we can fix it. And it just ignores all of the, the talk about the systematic murder of our bank accounts. It's like we're not the only people we're not the only person doing this to
Mhm.
ourselves. There's a lot of things at play. There's
Yeah.
personal responsibility involved, but that just looking at it from that lens
Mhm.
dismisses like a whole wide world of stuff that we're not really, that somebody's benefiting from us not having questions about and paying attention to.
Yeah, and I think in your recent episode that where you spoke to a financial therapist, I think that that was sort of starting to broach these topics of like there is an emotional component to all of this. There's a psychological component to money, and that is something that I think is hard for people to wrap their minds around, and that's a very important starting point. But like we kind of we're taking the next step and going, all right, we really want to talk about the greater structures in which we're all trying to operate and really take it out of the personal and into the collective. And we really feel strongly that, and I think over the course of the episodes, we really get to this question of like, what is this thing that we're all working within that we really only process as individuals when really there are so many other factors at play that it almost renders the personal piece moot. So I think when we're only talking about how do I manage my life from a practical perspective, from an emotional perspective, from a psychological perspective, we're still missing this bigger picture. And that's really what we wanted to discuss in the podcast.
It's always interesting, and I see this reflected in lots of things that aren't just financial, but that we are quick to say, hey, you screwed up, and how could you be so dumb to fall into using these predatory systems? And we don't always go, why do we allow so many predatory systems? And why do they exist and have multi-billion-dollar profits? And then we want to turn around and say each individual person who does it, it's just the explanation is they fucked up or there's something wrong with them or they're dumb or something. Instead of saying, well, a credit card company, a casino, a payday loan place, they can't stay open because only a handful of silly people wander in now and then to take refuge from the rain and then hook their credit card up to a slot machine. No, it's like,
how did this happen? Yeah,
exactly right. And to say that it's 100% accountability on an individual person also presupposes that everyone enters adulthood with the same amount of education of how those things even work at all, and that they have enough. The assumption is like, well, you just pay your bills. You don't pull out a credit card. It's like, great. There's a lot of assumptions built in that belief too, of what people can do.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's I see that mentality focusing on where do we place blame. We don't always question the systems and say, this why do we let it be set up this way?
Yeah. I mean, I never did my whole life until we started making this project.
Yeah. I mean, so few people have even just really a clear understanding of how things work and how they're supposed to. We don't talk about these things. Obviously, it's, that's one of the first things we discuss in the podcast is like, we're all just kind of supposed to know how things work, and then we think we're idiots if we don't know, and so then we don't ask. Yeah. And everything that's ultimately toxic to us starts when we don't really have open communication about things. So that's like a huge part culturally. We just don't talk about money. And then when we do, we're often just told to like do a few, it's real simple. Like, you hear that term a lot. It's a simple formula. It's just basic math. And it's like, well, no, it's actually not. Like there are so many factors at play culturally that we just buy into literally and figuratively. And, and that's really where we wanted to start kind of digging and go, what are those things? And why does it feel like, there's a million self-help books out there and yet people, our debt is higher than it ever has been. And debt, again, like that's the title of our podcast is Debt Heads, but that's just one, that's maybe the worst version of all of the things that we're experiencing. And so we start there, as, oh, this is the worst thing that could possibly happen. I'm in debt, but it really is just like one example of like a bigger toxic system that we're all kind of trying to operate in.
Yeah. And a lot of the advice does come from people who at least for a while, haven't really had to live. I mean, a lot of the people giving advice about money are millionaires or billionaires nowadays as well, that aren't necessarily, let's say, completely in touch with the experience that most people are having. When you hear that.
And who definitely got there all by themselves without any help and any assistance from any government. It's like this is such a fairy tale.
Sure.
But
it's also go ahead.
Oh, I'm just going to say the opportunity being presented. And there's a lot of times where people say, well, it's not like I got out of, college and someone gave me a ton of money or something. And it's like, oftentimes that's not even true in and of itself. However, even when it is true, I think people grossly underestimate if you come from either a family or socioeconomic status where you have opportunities, you get that job or you get a place to live for low cost or free because maybe your parents own some rental housing or people know who your parents are. And so, or you can afford to take an unpaid internship for several years that gives you better qualifications or just those kinds of things. I think we underestimate. It's like, hey, they're smart. But they're not. Yeah. They're not smart, meaning everybody can just do them, and so we underestimate how much that opportunity just comes along or doesn't sometimes.
Yeah, and I also think that speaks to another bigger issue that we discuss in the podcast, which is like there are many hidden costs of things, right? Like there are many things that you're not taking into consideration if you say, "Oh, this is a self-made person." The opposite is true. There are many things that you're not accounting for when you say like this is an inexpensive thing. Like it's like both sides of the spectrum. It's like we just look at something, we don't interrogate all the ways that we got to that place. And so there's a lot underneath the surface, and it's very easy to never ask any questions. And I know because I never asked any questions. And the second you start asking them, you're like, I can't ever unsee this now. I can't go back. And it changes you. I mean, it radicalizes you in a way that, I think is ultimately for the better of the world and my well-being. But it's like, it's harder. It's harder to face when you start really scrutinizing it.
Along the lines, a few years back, I read something. Well, let's say I read most of, at least a third of a book that was one of these kind of self-help books. It was one with a catchy title. I don't recall it offhand. I don't want to look it up because I'm not going to try to put the author on blast because I'm sure they're a listener. But it was one of these that had a kind of title like "Make Money Your Bitch" or whatever. That was kind of like, you can do this. And the first third that I went through was like, it was very much just kind of like, if you change your attitude and don't think about money and chase your bliss, then money will run to you. And then I kind of skipped ahead because it started being a bit repetitive towards the middle. So I skipped kind of ahead and was looking, and in the end it was like, here's the great example that the author gave, which is that once they believed in themselves enough, they went to a friend and asked for a loan of $200,000 to start their new journey. And
exactly.
Wow.
Like,
great.
But that really was published.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Incredible. I'm going to write that down. I got to write that down.
Yeah, exactly. We got them on the line right now. No, but anyway, but you see where what I would call that is another example of that toxicity in the way that the engagement, because then if I read that and what if I don't, do I believe that I don't, because I don't have a source to borrow $200,000 interest free for fun or for whatever I'm starting up my weird coaching business. Did I not manifest hard enough? Did I not change my attitude hard enough? Did I not chase my actual bliss? Do I just suck?
Yeah. And that just goes back to this idea that you're in control of any of these things. And again, like, we don't want to underestimate the power of, believing in yourself and doing the work and, having a positive attitude to get anything started. But I think that, just to take the example of self-help books in and of themselves, it is an industry. It is an industry that requires you to buy something to then get there, and then they're making a profit. And it is not, that's emblematic of our economy. Our economy is a market-based economy. It is about profit. And when we look at everything through that lens, and I think that that's really what we try to do with the podcast, is really go, when you look at everything through that lens, which is what everyone does, because that is it's our kind of greatest religion as Americans. You know, you are responsible for yourself. You make money, and that is your responsibility, and that is your success, and everything. Our identity is tied up in that. It becomes a non-starter for a lot of people when they don't have the resources to overcome these things, when they think it really is all about positive thinking, and then at every stage they are coming up with, they're coming across more obstacles that again are all around wealth accumulation. When wealth accumulation is our religion, when it is the framework from which we understand our lives,
and our metric of success as a person.
Yeah, it really becomes hard to make really basic decisions. And I think that that's really what we wanted to kind of question is like, sure, we could, it is important to save money. It is important to not overspend our resources, but why are we always looking at it as if it were only my resources, only my money to spend, only my, wealth to accumulate, as opposed to what we're really all living on planet Earth with,
in relationship to each other. Yeah.
With the resources that we have on this planet. And when our economy is based on the exploitation of all of those resources and ourselves, there is no end game in which you outthink that. That is an exploitative system. So I think what we really are trying to do here is draw the parallels between our understanding of our personal success or failure in relation to this like fundamentally exploitative system. So that's ultimately where we go with the podcast. It starts like, oh, you guys are going to get out of debt. And that's the story.
Yeah.
What we really want to do is question the concept of success and failure within this one framework and go, why are we operating within this framework when maybe that framework is not leading anyone anywhere good, ultimately?
And connecting our inherent value to the system as opposed to just being a valuable person on the planet because we are here.
Yeah. And I think, it's just like, it should kind of, we talk a lot about a lot of different topics. We talk about credit cards, we talk about consumerism, we talk about family relations and therapy, and all of these psychological factors, the values that we adopt as kids, and the how those things change in the workplace. We talk about labor, we talk about trying to have a career. And, a lot of the choices, a lot of our personal stories are emblematic, are good anecdotally for explaining some of these fundamental sort of problems. I think when we assign our value based on our success in the workplace, when our success in the workplace is often compromised by the fact that our survival is based on whether or not we can, our work is often made because we're afraid of, not being able to survive,
earn your living.
Right. So when you start there, and most people have to make compromises just to be able to survive, that's then like, what are the questions? Like, what are the choices that you're making? And then, again, like when success is only measured based on the amount of money you make or the access that you have, or again, like these choices are basic choices that people make, and then therefore are buying again into this greater system. So we're all like, our survival is, based on this participation in this. And so it's very hard
we can't untangle ourselves from it. And then when we are entangled in it and we are not, quote, succeeding, then it's all of a sudden it's only our fault. Right. Yeah. Like then it's like we worked together to get here, but you have to get out of it. And you're dumbass, like, because you can't.
Yeah. I've heard people say that, like, here in the United States, particularly like when you talk about things that might rattle the system, you get pushback of people saying like, oh, well, that's socialism or communism, like buzzwords that a lot of people will use. And we're a capitalist society. But I've heard a lot of people say that, We are a capitalist society. We have purer and purer capitalistic values when you focus on how the individual is treated in our system. We have greater and greater, more socialism type of programs and supports when you are either a massive corporation or a very rich person.
Yes.
Exactly.
So
Socialism only for the very wealthy. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. We're not in the same world. We're not in the same stratosphere even.
Yeah.
And it also what is capitalism when the same five people own everything? It's not even capitalism. It's there's no real opportunity.
Right.
Anyway.
When it's built into the system that you have to have the rotation of purchasing, producing, and that, and there are basically there are industries within our system that are not allowed to fail. It would be, the theory being it would be so detrimental to the economy if this industry fails, so it can't. It's not allowed to.
Right.
Governmentally, they can't allow certain.
God forbid. Yeah. God forbid the corporations fail. Meanwhile, all the people seem to not be doing so well, but that's our fault. That's not their problem,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, we're talking very, broadly here. So if there's any questions you have more specifically about things that we've discovered or things
I was curious if you could give some specific examples of the things that you found and profiled and fixed. We'll get to that third one. All the things you guys have.
Yeah. We fixed so much. We're
going to do that
everything
today by the end of the day.
Yeah. We fixed it. We fixed it.
Yeah. Well, I think we start with this notion that again, we're struggling in our bubble, and I think the first big realization is that so many people are I'm alone in this. I am alone in my failure with money. I will not talk about it, and therefore I will stay further and further isolated in my fears and my shame. And the first step really is to recognize that most people are in the situation. The vast majority of people on planet Earth are in the same situation. They are struggling financially. They have, been forced into a situation in which they have to make a bunch of, decisions that do not necessarily align with their values to survive. That's the very first, piece of that. And then we kind of go from there and go, okay, so then, what are the ways in which we're educated? As so many people are told, you need to build a credit score, you need to, get a job, you need to, live, buy a house, be alone. Especially our angle really is the millennial experience, which was very much based on the boomer generation, our parents who were, telling us this is how it is.
It's so easy. It's just
nuclear family, career,
education, pay for your education because you have to have an education, right? The college wage premium, where colleges realize that they can charge more money because people want this degree, right? So
be better than the generation before you.
Yeah.
These are embedded in our understanding of success and in what it means to be an adult. And so, so we kind of go in and we start to, question each one of those things, I think that one of the big points that we're trying to make for our generation, which is, we're calling it the millennial generation because of the time frame. So a lot changes in the late 70s and early 80s from a political and economic standpoint in America specifically. A lot changes. There's the deregulation of banks. There is the
busting of unions.
Yes, and there is changes in the labor force and international trade, and then there's a very specific, Supreme Court decision that changes interest rates and how the banking industry became very, very profitable in the late 70s, early 80s. And that really led to specifically debt, as we know it today, personal debt.
Which was a shock, really a shocking revelation. I think at every juncture, every couple of weeks we'd look at each other and be like, this also happened in the 80s. This also happened in the 80s.
Yeah.
And unless you're spending 3 years of your life making a narrative podcast about it, that's not really the front of mind. You're like, no, we just have debt and Americans have debt and that's how it is. No, like this one thing happened in the 70s and then debt explodes. Like there's a very clear correlation here that we're not scrutinizing at all.
That applies specifically to credit card debt. And I think that is that's a really important thing that people need to understand, is that like credit cards are predatory products and they are extremely profitable, and most people are told that you need to use them in order to be an adult. So that was like one of the first kind of things that we point out, but it goes much deeper than that. And I think that there's so many other things that change around this period of time. So that's again like why we call it sort of the millennial story, but it affects obviously everyone in the current who is existing at this point. But our generation was very much like, you follow these rules. And I think we still, I think people are starting to realize that that's not the case. I think new generations are starting to question that, but it's still very much
it's still there. It still exists. Even if you know, from a, logical standpoint that this is not possible, you still feel emotionally that maybe it is for me, actually. And I have to believe that, because what else the fuck am I doing right now?
Yeah, you're given a rule book of these are the next steps. These are the next logical steps. This is what you're supposed to do. And they're all based on this generation that was, that did benefit from a very specific period in time, the post-war generation that was, again, highly socialist when you really look at the way that the tax structure was set up. And it benefited, the vast majority of the middle class, but it also set up things like, the nuclear family. It set up automotive, pathway, infrastructure.
Relying on cars.
The separation of community, I think, also kind of happens around this period of time. So now we're in this place where there's very few resources compared to what our parents' generation were, by and large. The majority of like white privileged folk in the
not even taking into consideration how problematic that is on its by itself.
You get
but the American
racial,
dream,
like redlining and different things like that
absolutely,
Black Americans particularly.
Exactly. And even when we do examine these things, I mean, again, I'm going into credit cards because that's where we start, but, and then it takes off from there. But you do look at sort of this exclusion of, only white men can get credit cards, right? And then you look at this thing and you're like, oh, well, it's good that more people have access to credit now, right? But then when it becomes predatory and exploitative, then you're like, wait a second, why wasn't it like that before when it was only, available to this like one very specific set of people? So, that's another thing that we sort of uncovered in this reporting, is like at every step of the way, you're like, yes, things should be more, quote, like equitable. We should have more access, but what's happening alongside that access?
Yeah, again, I think, a lot of people, when they, talk to us about this topic, and it's like, well, loans and, access to sort of, and funds to get started on anything is important. And that is what has allowed so many people freedom to, build wealth or rise above their station. And we totally acknowledge that, getting access to those products is important for people. We're not saying that like we shouldn't be able
to get
rid
of it.
To,
well, you can't opt
borrow
out
money.
of a system that is so ingrained. You can't opt 100% out of it with, and you can't function. It's like, oh, try to get a job without a car, try to get a job without internet access, or, and I wish, I don't know, we're not there yet to where people are not anymore saying, oh, you have money troubles and a smartphone. And it's like, yeah, try to function without one with a lot of regular systems. I know several people who have opted towards a simpler, dumber phone just to unplug from social media and things like that. An admirable philosophy. But it is hard to live because you cannot participate in a lot of text change. You can't just get directions the same way. And our system is not built for pulling a Rand McNally atlas out of your trunk like I used to, or whatever.
That would be nice, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, there just isn't that kind of the
Or carry
infrastructure
it in your
punishes
tote bag.
you for
Yeah.
not having, exactly, not having devices or subscription services. Whenever tech comes out, it becomes monetized, and then it's integrated to where if you're not paying for access to it, you are at a loss, and sometimes not even able to basically function. So that's, it's hard to try to find that, to say, where do we go from there? Like, we can't just end it, or we can't just opt out. Yeah.
Of course not. And also, like, if you take the financial advice of like, don't spend your money, and everyone takes that financial advice, then what?
That's not our
Then
system.
our economy falls
That's
apart.
not the system that
Our
we
economy
have,
does. I mean, and I think that that's, again, like one of the main points that we make is that, like, it is very profitable for us to be in debt. That is
In a
how a lot of
financialized
people
economy,
make their money. And again, like, our financialized economy is part of the story, right? Like that transition to the product is no longer, a thing. It is now debt. It is now
the loan you need to
liquidating
get that
of
thing.
our money, and a lot of the time our exploitation. So, and I think, it really does get complicated when you start looking at things like, the financial advice that we're often given to succeed, saving, investing, building wealth. Those systems are also embedded in our exploitation. So, we could be investing into, our IRA, and those investments are buying up other people's debt. They're buying up, the debt of people who are using payday loans. So often it's a circular sort of
It's relying on failure, right?
Yeah.
Like success at the expense of another person or ourselves, or our planet, right? Like, we don't know what we're investing in, and what are these people using our money for, to, like, not to spoil the last episode of our podcast, but it's like, these are the bigger questions that you have, that you like. You get this advice, you take this advice. This advice is actually, like, not only maybe hurting you, but hurting the whole, like, your whole ability to even exist on planet Earth. So what does it really mean to quote succeed in that sense?
As you,
Just going to say, we got real existential there for a minute.
Yeah,
sorry.
Awesome.
Did we mention our podcast is funny?
Yeah. Really funny. And we always have to tell people that, because they're like, oh God, the economy. We're like, no, it's really funny. It's mostly pop culture references.
Well, and I can second that, as having, come across that now as I was prepping to talk to you guys. Also, great Instagram follow, Debt Heads Podcast.
Oh, thanks.
Also,
thank you.
some funny things. I really liked when you guys were doing the little parody of wealth building advice, of just like, so is money good to have? Yes. Oh, thank God you told me that. It just mirrored.
That's
so
what it
much
sounds like.
that
Doesn't
level.
it sound like that? Yeah. Like, if you don't have money, you need to get money. You're like, oh, I didn't think of that.
Yeah,
exactly. It's like, and if you're not making enough, we hear that again of, well, why don't you get a better job? And it's like, great. We're not really doing it. What are we doing at that point? Now, obviously, as you guys, it seems like the main mission you guys have is raising awareness of these things. It seems like, right? Or how would you break that down of your other goals for people to take away from your messages?
I think that we would like regular people who think that they're alone to first of all just recognize that they're not. First of all, just like, let's get rid of the shame. Let's get rid of these places that make it a non-starter for us to even question. But our podcast is not a personal finance podcast. It is not one that's telling you how to get rich, and it is not telling you how to get out of debt. It is telling you that you're in debt, not simply because you've made either poor choices or choices that were based on hard, compromises that you had to make to live your life, to participate in the systems that make life worth living, that make life possible, that make you part of, society. But there are also, you're in that position because it is profitable for other people for you to be in that.
Who are not you.
And so again, we really, we dive into like what the credit card industry is, why we have a consumer-based economy, why our jobs are becoming so hard to sustain, why having a career is sort of like an antiquated notion at this point. And really start to question, like, I think these aren't new concepts, obviously, but I think that often people intellectualize these things as these sort of, greater notions that you could read about in a book, and they don't tie them to their personal lives. And I think that the point of our podcast is to really tie them to our personal lives and really make somebody who enjoys pop culture references and songs to really
like
kind of,
a little subversive, not like a trick, but it's like, and awareness 100% is first, but also like bringing this information to people who aren't seeking it out, who aren't thinking about these things critically or aren't thinking about them at all, because again, it's profitable for them to not think about them at all, because we can't change anything if we don't know what it is, right? And so I think first and foremost is the awareness, and it is, there's a lot we learned so much making this podcast. I think there's a lot to learn for people who listen to it now, and we bring it, we serve it up, on a plate that looks delicious and isn't like, the most boring thing you've ever heard in your life. It's like, it's making it accessible, making it like easier for people to hear, digest, understand, and then be like, start questioning their belief systems and how they got there. And I think like that is the first step in a lot of steps toward changing the world fundamentally. But that's like the big pipe dream.
That's the big pipe dream.
But
we just need people to listen to the podcast.
Yes. We made the podcast and then we wanted people to listen to it. No. And asking questions.
I like the accessibility feature of your guys' work because, like you said, it's very much, it's not the kind of thing that's like, oh, here's what you do in a way that either builds shame or creates false, narratives. It's also, like you say, it's fun, it's engaging, and you guys are talking about a thing that really does touch, if not everybody technically, then the vast, vast majority, as you put it, in the whole world, the vast majority of people who are just trying to survive. And as you put it, I think that's huge. If we don't know what the problems are, even the ones that are outside our control, if we don't acknowledge that they're there, then we can't make fully informed decisions of what to do.
No.
Yeah,
really not.
And I think it gets back to the kind of the thing that you mentioned early on, which is that like we kind of stop talking when these questions are asked. Like people go, well, are you talking about socialism? Are you talking about capitalism?
Right.
The economy's boring. I don't want to talk about that. And I think what we're really trying to say is like, I'm not really interested in talking about in political terms, and I'm not really interested in these being these like kind of like untouchable topics that are like sitting on some, shelf in the library. This is our lives. Like the economy is our life. Like our life is like Jamie and I even like at the end of the podcast, we're like, okay, so we're artists, we're writers, we want to go watch the movies, we want to dance, we want to drink, cocktails by the beach. We don't care about the economy. The economy is boring. And then, we look up the definition of the economy. And the definition of the economy is like, how does human life sustain itself with the resources that are available to us on this planet? That is the economy. Right. That is everyone's experience. Exactly. That is just living. So I think we wanted like from a very, if you really get down to the nitty gritty of what the podcast is about, it is about life, and we just want people to think about the economy as a choice that we have made about how to navigate the resources that we're all sharing here.
Yeah. Well, and it also breaks away from the shame. I really love how it kind of comes full circle when you talk about being able to talk about it. And at the beginning, as you had said, that you brought up the topic of your own, I want to talk about my feelings about my debt, but you'll probably think I'm dumb. You'll probably get mad at me when I say it. Just that feeling itself. And then to go the full circle around and say, let's get rid of that and open up conversation instead of shame. I think that's an excellent journey. As a therapist,
Zach, thank you.
The word journey now and again. Oh no, you're welcome.
We had a breakthrough.
Yes.
Yeah. And shame is a really interesting topic.
Cool. Yeah.
A really interesting topic that we talked to a shame researcher early on. She's one of the first people that's featured in episode 1. And in her book, Cathy O'Neil, I don't know if you know her work, but in her book, there is an anecdote that I found really compelling, and it's I won't go into like the actual anecdote, but the concept is that shame clearly is a powerful thing, but it's also it's a tool that's often used again to sort of contribute to the exploitation of the average person. But when you look at it as a tool for connection, it actually can be a positive thing. And I think that when you look at shame as a way for us to confront things that are problematic and bring us back together, then we're just using it wrong. Right now, we're using it to keep ourselves silent, to separate ourselves. And what we really need to do is go, what is really not working here? And what is actually like not good for the world, for all of us?
Let's talk about
Let's
it.
find
Get through
those
it.
things
Yeah.
and actually apply the shame in a positive way to the things that aren't good for all of us, and try to find a way to bring ourselves back together.
And it's like anything, right? Like when you have an interpersonal issue with someone and you don't want to bring it up because you're afraid of what will happen if you bring it up, and so you keep it to yourself, versus bringing it up, being really, really fucking uncomfortable, and then 9 times out of 10 being closer, more connected, and safer as a result. But we don't live in that world, and that's like true of personal and the whole world, right? Like you never, unless the person's not really your friend or someone that's supposed to be in your life, and then it can go to shit, and then that's also information for you, right? Like that is also an information for you to have a better life. But not confronting the issue is not the answer.
Right. Yeah. I mean, obviously that's not the answer, but so much of our, like, even our legal system is like, do not admit guilt.
Exactly.
Do not admit anything, because you will be taken advantage of, because it is like, that's how we use it. But if we started to kind of, if we started to look and go, wait, like, okay, I might have spent too much at Sephora today because I had a crappy week at work, and this is the thing that I walk by. That everything around me is telling me to make me feel better. I'm supposed to feel really, really badly about that. But none of us are going, why are the advertisements everywhere telling me to do that? Why are the credit card companies telling me that if I just spend more here, then I'll get these benefits? Let's start looking at those systems and going, maybe we should start looking at how we should be ashamed that those things are the things that we just accept as
culturally,
like,
what are we ashamed of?
And say,
move the shame. Let's move the shame.
Let's shift
outward.
Let's shift it to where there's actually problems, and not only on us. Yeah.
Well, the show is Debt Heads, and I want everyone to know a little bit, specifically where do they find that, and where do they follow you guys and your work, what kinds of things you want to tell them. Before we share that, I always like to give everybody the chance to share one of their favorite ways of giving back to the community, whether that's a nonprofit or a charity or anything that you'd mention. Is there anything you'd like to tell the people about?
Well, I mean, there are so many, but I think we'll highlight a few things that just have to do with the topic that we're talking about today. So there is an organization called Debt Collective that is organizing for
people in debt,
specifically around student debt. That's an interesting place to check out if you're interested in this topic. And then there is an organization called the Hebrew Free Loan Society in New York City. They're also allied with other networks across the country, but they are places that raise money to provide free loans to people. So loans that have 0% interest. So people can try to, invest in a business or better their lives to some degree without consequence.
Without getting into a, compounded interest spiral, which we didn't know even existed until we started working on this. And that's part of what we're, starting to work on now for our next season, is investigating some of these places that exist that people who have been working on this for 3 years, we didn't know about until the person who is working for one of these places didn't smack me in the face, but like smacked me digitally on my Instagram
He tracked us
DMs.
down.
Yeah.
It's like, we need people to
He's
know
like, we
about
need
this.
more people to know that this is available.
Nice.
And
Yeah.
and again, it is a nationwide service that it's just, runs by state. So that's the one here. I'm sure you could probably find out more information about one that exists in your state, even just by going there and inquiring.
But you can contribute to those.
Yes.
You can be a person who donates money to
help
help people have loans that are
not predatory.
That's awesome. Wow, thank you. Well, where do people find you, your work, your show, all that stuff?
We're here. No, I'm just kidding. We are.
I'm going to put up
Deadheads.
your coordinates here on the notes.
This is our address. Yes, no, we are Deadheads podcast on basically all social platforms. We have a Substack. We're on Instagram, where you will find maybe not always us, but what's the word I'm looking for? So people that are representing us for our content. Yeah. And you can find Deadheads wherever you get your podcasts. And I think that's it.
Yeah, season 1 is completely out now.
Yeah. And free, totally free to listen to. You can support us for some bonus content that we are currently working on. And by people representing us, I mean, I bought 2 Barbie dolls on eBay and I've been using them to make content for the podcast.
Nice.
Because everyone says that we need to be on social media, apparently, which is also part of the
thing.
problem.
I'm so bad at that as a podcaster.
Yeah.
I'll release 5
Yeah.
TikToks a year.
Yeah. That's a
average.
good strategy. I like that. Yeah.
It's not a strategy.
Started
It's
on
just
social
a,
media.
yeah. Some
Yeah.
people would call it a failure more than a strategy, but either way. And if people want to sign up for the Deadheads Visa to get extra points back on the episodes, how do they do that?
Yes.
No.
If you spend $10,000 in the next 3 months, you'll get 100 million points.
Yeah.
To
Nice.
spend.
And a Barbie
Yeah.
doll.
And then you'll get a free copy of our book, which the big secret at the end is that you can just go ahead and ask your friend for $200,000.
Awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
That's episode 11. Well, thank you so
Exactly.
much again, guys. It's been really, really great to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much.